Hello, thank you for stopping by. This is the all-new Family Feud for the NES, released in 1990 by GameTech. Some other versions of this game were released earlier than this in '87. Those were for the home PCs of that era, like the Commodore 64 and the Apple II. After this particular release, GameTech would go on to release a handful more Family Feud games for a whole bunch of different systems. And in 2000, Ubisoft took over the franchise. I would imagine that some of the newer versions of this game are going to be significantly more advanced than what we have here, but I find this one entertaining enough. Actually, I kind of find a lot of games like this, ones that are based on game shows, to be fun to play if they're older. Yes, I'm sure that the newer games have more fresh content, and they're going to be more flashy and have all the advancements of newer systems, but these older games, they had to get to the core of what the game was supposed to be about, and the content would also be restricted to the time that it was developed. And I think there's an added level of interest, considering all the questions in this game are more than 30 years old, as are the monetary wins. I mean, this is all low dollar value stuff. This version feels like you're playing a little bit of history, and there's just something amusing about that to me. So this is the Family Feud, and you can play this 1 or 2 players. Purpose of the game is to get to the most points, and in order to do that, you have to answer the questions correctly. More specifically, you're tasked with coming up with a list of answers for a particular question, and the question basically was asked of a panel of people, and they surveyed all those people, and they collated their answers. They load and hide the top survey answers, and you have to guess what those are, and when you do, you gain points. You get 3 strikes to fail, and every time you fail, the next person in the family answers. If you get 3 strikes, it passes over to the opposing family, and all they have to do is get 1 answer correct, and they can steal all the points. Unless you're playing with a room full of people and handing off the controller, it's probably just going to be you, so as it's shuffling through your different family members, I imagine it's not a full family that's playing. So if you live in the United States, this is probably a pretty obvious game, and you've most likely seen this before. I imagine it exists in some form in other countries, but overall I think it's a pretty popular game in the US, and I'm pretty sure it's still running today. For the NES, I think this game has one main failing in its mechanics. Now, they're not totally faulty, but this is a game where you have to give words as an answer. And this is the NES. You don't get a multiple choice selection. You don't have the ability to speak the word into a microphone. You have to type it in. On the NES, we don't have a keyboard. You only have a gamepad, and you have a directional and 2 basic buttons, A and B. When you give an answer, you have a video keypad on screen, and you have to select the letters to spell out your answer. This is on a timer, and you're racing through trying to make sure you're getting your answer on screen in time. When you select a letter, press A on the gamepad to advance to the next one. The failing here is that you don't use the B button to reverse a letter. Instead, you have to scroll down with the gamepad and select the delete option to go backwards. What a total fail for such a simple game. Seriously, you can't just use the B button? What a waste. You have to spell things correctly also, in order for the system to understand your answer, and anything you do to the contrary will get you a wrong answer. The manual says it should be able to accept certain variations of answers, but in my experience it's just not as lenient as you'd like it to be. And being unable to back up with a simple B button press to correct yourself, that really slows things down. It's such a bummer. It would have been so much better to just be able to jump back quickly. Still, the game does function like you would expect a Family Feud game to function, so if you know those rules, you basically know these rules. I think the sound in this game is fairly generic for an NES game. It's got a standard jingle, which is fine. I'm not sure if it's actually the jingle for Family Feud, but they've got a jingle to start the game anyway, so that's not so bad. But the basic sound effects past this are just buzzing in for answers, that sort of thing. The graphics are relatively standard for an NES title. They're rudimentary, they're limited, and the color palette is slightly painful. And there's little variation of avatars. I guess that part was kind of a letdown for me, because even playing Jeopardy on the NES, I seem to recall being able to select from a few different cartoon avatars. Here, you just have a shuffle for 2 goofy families. I think there is some slight variation in the cartoons they use, but you can't go pick and choose. I suppose they kind of look like the character types I would expect from the era, so they work, just it would have been nice to be able to pick your family. It's also kind of hilarious when the game actually starts, because the host, who's this relatively generic guy with the pompadour, he does what a variety of hosts did over the years in this game. When they welcome the family, and the family's starting to play, the host walks over and he greets each person individually. Here he walks over and he kisses all the women, and he stares at the guys. I'm sure I'm overthinking it, but I find it amusing. I think it's a competent game show game on the NES. It's simple, it's no different than the source game, and I was happy to find this in the wild. I went away for a few days in the holidays, and I popped into this random video game store we found, and they had a really decent stock of games. That's where I found this. I thought I had it already, but after I checked my database, I didn't. And I'm always happy to find something in the wild that I've never actually got my hands on before. It's very cool. Well, that's all I have today for Family Feud for the NES. Thank you for stopping by for a look, and I hope to catch you on another video.